Hello, and welcome to the Discovering and Aligning with Your Core Values webinar. Welcome, you are in the right place. Let's get started. I want to share with you what we're going to be going over in today's webinar. During our time together, I'm going to share a little bit about my story, my why this particular focus on core values. We'll then also talk about what core values are and why I think they're necessary for us to transform our lives. Then you're going to have an opportunity to do the core values exercise. We'll then follow up with some reflection time so you have time to really think about what it is that you're taking away from the exercise. And in this particular webinar, you're not going to have the opportunity for small group share because you're watching the recording, but I do encourage you to take some time and to discuss your learnings and your insights with someone in your trusted network. And then we'll do some closing. Again, there'll be no Q&A, but I do invite you to email me or connect with me outside of this webinar if there are things that you want to discuss about how to dive deeper into the work around your core values. Before you continue on with this webinar, I want you to pause and consider what could get in the way of you being fully present for yourself in this moment. Do you need to set an intention? Perhaps you actually need to make some change in your space. Just go on and press pause now and grab that snack or grab a drink of water or make sure you have the materials around you that would be helpful. You also might need to manage your expectations, right? I know sometimes now that I'm a new mom, diving deeper into something, I have to manage my expectations that I may be interrupted. And if I start off thinking that and recognizing that may happen, I can right now consider how I want to respond in that moment rather than assuming I'm going to go about this and never be interrupted during this period. What expectations do you need to manage? Take 1 minute and consider what you need to be fully present for this webinar. If you need to pause here and make those shifts. So if you're not familiar with who I am, hello, I'm Tanisha Williams. I coach BIPOC women and non-binary leaders to thrive in their careers without sacrificing their wellness and their personal lives. I've been doing this work for the past 3.5 years, and I'm excited to continue on this journey. The things that you see on the screen, those are icons for the values or for the principles that I use to do my work. So I really, on a regular basis, talk with my clients about assessing their well-being, about aligning with their core values, which is our focus today, about assembling their crew, so the ways to have accountability partners and a trusted network, how to really take action on their plan, and also how to stay attuned to themselves. And I didn't come up with this by sitting and meditating one evening. I came up with it because it is literally the path that I took to transform my life to what it is today. So let me share a little bit about that with you. So, this is a screen that just shows you a little bit about who I am. I am zooming in and recording this webinar from Richmond, Virginia. That is my hometown where I grew up and also returned to after about 9 years away. My background is in education, it's in art, and it's in counseling. And you will see all of that infused in the work that I do. And all of those, that context about me also shows up in my coaching. I always like to introduce who's in my home because, again, managing expectations, I may be interrupted. My wife, Marthea, my dog, Nemo, and a new addition to our family, baby Mahogany, are all people who I hold dearly and for whom I also do this work personally for myself as well. And you can see my core values on the screen, which came into play for helping me to move throughout the career journey that I had and now be able to run my own business in a way that is sustainable, both physically, mentally, emotionally, and financially. So I started off as a college admission counselor after getting my master's of education in family and marriage counseling. Doing work in the college admission sector was very eye-opening, to say the least. But I would say that during that period of time, that's when I really started recognizing this feeling of being overworked, of what it meant to work from 9 to 5 and then continue working from 5 to 9, and recognizing that it wasn't a sustainable life for me. What I did love about my work is that it had me in touch with young people, especially students from historically marginalized and underrepresented backgrounds, for whom I served as a mentor to. And it also gave me an eye into recognizing a lot of the, how should I put it, disparities that existed within the field of education. Because of the work I did to support and mentor those young people, I shifted to also serving as a director of diversity initiatives, was an equity practitioner from around 2013 until around summer of 2021. That work was incredibly rewarding. I absolutely love the work I did. But again, I started recognizing those signs of burnout, overwhelm, where I wasn't able to fully bring myself to my life because so much of my life went into my work. Um, People would look at my journey and would say it was successful. The summer of 2021, I launched my own consulting company. And what I would say is it was absolutely successful. However, behind the scenes, while I was thriving in my careers, I also found myself very boxed in at times, working at places that would sometimes see my position as performative rather than one that could be transformative for the institution. I found myself getting really frustrated when there were things that I knew I had skill to do or things that I knew needed to happen in the organization. However, because of many different factors, those things were not prioritized. I also found myself overwhelmed. In the positions I was in, I was the inaugural person in those positions. I was an office of one and was supporting many different groups in the organization: students, parents, faculty and staff members, board members, administrators, alumni sometimes. I was good at my job, but each year that meant that there was something new that was adding onto my plate. And that sense of overwhelm, like, when do I have the time to get it all done, felt pretty constant. There were other times where I was completely embarrassed in my career because I was a representative of the organization, but found that sometimes the actions of the organizations that I was working in did not align with my integrity, with my values, or with the job that I was in charge of. There was a sense of isolation at times. So while I may have been somebody who was out front and very visible, there were times where that office of diversity, equity, and inclusion became isolating. Um, I was maybe looked at for solutions to issues that I wasn't brought in to actually help, cultivate or plan for from the beginning. And when you think about all these pieces, it also means that at the end of the day, I found myself depleted. um, physically, emotionally, and mentally. It was very hard for me to be creative sometimes in these positions because so much of my mental energy was going towards managing so many aspects: other people's feelings, helping to mentor, to coach, to mediate. And again, also tugging internally with, am I doing a position that feels like it has strong integrity behind it? Am I in a position that's more performative for this organization? Is the work that I'm doing sustainable? Um, there was a period at which in my last organization, I actually just paused and found myself so depleted, not wanting to even physically go into the school. That's when I knew, like, oh, wow, we have hit a point. And so I actually went back to an exercise that I had done with several of my colleagues a few years back, where we looked at our core values. I opened up my folder, I looked at my core values and recognized, wow, Tamisha, no wonder you are not thriving in this place. Your core values actually aren't in alignment right now, right? Um, you're finding a tension with integrity, with the decisions you're having to make or the direction in which the school's going with this work. You are not able to be creative because you're being depleted, and because you're being torn in different directions without being able to truly focus. If I had a team, perhaps I would have had some more room and spaciousness. I wasn't able to focus on my health and wellness. I wasn't able to focus on my family and friends and loved ones. With all of those things being out of alignment, I recognize this isn't the place for me. This isn't the role. And so I was following this pathway. I was assessing my well being and recognizing I'm not well. I was out of alignment with my core values. So I started checking in with my own crew, with my trusted community, with former colleagues, with friends to say, here's what I'm thinking, right? Here's what I'm experiencing. Here's what's challenging. And to have those friends mirror back for me what I was experiencing, affirm me, and to say, like, no, what you're experiencing, that is real. That's reality. And to also challenge me in those times when I wanted to make things work, even though I already knew that they weren't working and it was beyond the point of me being able to stay and have a sustainable role. So I came up with a plan. That particular fall, I knew that come into the school year, I wanted to be out of that organization. And I was already doing consulting work on the side. And so I decided, let's activate your plan, start a consulting company, use the clients that you are currently working with part-time, do work with them full-time. And I activated my plan and was able to, in the summer of 2021, start Tamisha Williams Consulting and find a way to do it in a way that was sustainable, had full integrity, my creativity could shine throughout it. And that staying attuned to my inner compass is something I'm continuing to do. Within my first year, I'll have you know that I ended the year even more depleted than I did when I was working for schools. And what that had me do is recognizing, well, Tamisha, now that you were in charge of your life, there's no other external forces here that made those decisions. There's some patterns that you actually need to unlearn. And so I needed to go back to my core values and say, what are some of the ways in which I'm actually not operating in these values anymore? And in my second and third year of business, I've been able to transform my business so that it's sustainable and for me, again, financially, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Staying attuned to my inner compass has meant that I'm able to celebrate going into a fourth year of business and to feeling well as I do it. And these are the 5 principles for which I do my work on a regular basis with my clients. So I'd love for you to pause and consider, what do you most need from this space? Is it seeking greater fulfillment for your life? Something that I was definitely doing when I was in that space of feeling depleted at my job. Are you wanting to live a more purpose-driven life? Lead with more intention? Perhaps you're wanting to make decisions that are more value aligned. You also may find yourself distracted and you say, how do I take more focused action with the work I'm doing, or more focused action towards my goals? And you may say, you know what, I actually just want to engage with more BIPOC women and non-binary leaders. That's why I'm here. Great. Whatever the reason is, you're in the right place. So just pause and consider what you most need from this space in this moment. While we don't have the chat, again, just invite you to, if you need to, just pause and write that down. Jot that down for yourself as a reminder. And if you need to pause the video, please do so here to do that. So why core values? Let's hop into it. Core values are our internal guidelines, whether it be conscious or unconscious. They guide how we experience alignment in a space. They also guide how we act and how we make decisions. So when I was unconsciously feeling, wow, something about this place just isn't working for me, I've never felt this disengaged from a job that I've been doing. What I made conscious by reviewing my core values is, oh, there are several things that are out of alignment. So what my hope is that as you get more clear about your core values, that awareness of how your core values are showing up and how you make decisions and how you act becomes more of a conscious effort. I also find that some of the ways in which I naturally am in the world are aligned with my core values. I'm a very creative individual, and if I'm doing something and I can't infuse creativity and it feels hard for me. I also regularly consider ways that equity shows up around me and in the spaces I'm in. That's just something that when I move into a space, I always have an eye on. And wellness is always a focus. Now, what I will also say is that I've found that my core values can also be aspirational, and that there are some times at which, for example, that wellness one, I knew I needed to aspire to that one. I wasn't in alignment. So I had to make clear and conscious decisions about how to become more well, to get in alignment with my core values. It's my belief that when we understand our core values, we can lead with greater confidence. We can cultivate affirming community because I'm going to be wanting to be around people who share my values. I'm going to be in spaces, right, that are values aligned. Again, and the people that are going to be in those spaces are also value aligned. So I'm going to be able to cultivate that community that can affirm me, that can support me, that can also challenge and hold me accountable. I've also found myself being able to communicate with more clarity because I'm more tuned to my core values. When something is out of alignment, I can speak to that. I can name this does not match with right the level of integrity that I want to put something out into the world. I'm not confused at why it feels off for me. And I found that I can take focused action when I have several choices in front of me, when things are confusing or it's like, oh gosh, which way do I go? Pausing and centering myself and saying, how are my core values showing up in either of these options really helps me to then take focused action that, again, I feel aligned with. And all of that helps me to lead a fulfilling life, to lead a fulfilling life. So now what I'd like you to do is to take out that learning packet and I want you to begin the core values exercise. Here's how we're going to do that. First, review the full list of values. Note which ones resonate. What I sometimes do is we'll go through with a pen or a highlighter and highlight them. No restriction, right? If it resonates, I'm marking it. You may find that other words or values come up. Add those to the list. After you've done that, then go through the exercise of narrowing down to 10 values. And again, what I find useful sometimes is thinking, oh, these two are really important to me, but I might do a little combination. If I do this one, I know it means this. But go through that exercise, narrow down. And then what you want to do is after you have your 10, take a breath, maybe move away from them and come back and narrow your list down to 3 to 5 values. And those would be your core values. If you need access to the learning packet and it wasn't in your email for this webinar, here is a QR code. You can also use that tiny URL website link to get your packet. The packet is on Google Documents, so you will need to go to File, Make a Copy. If you want to create a copy for yourself that you can edit, you can also go to File and download it into any other format that is helpful for you. Pause now and complete the first part of your core values exercise to get down to that 3 to 5 core values. All right, welcome back. So now that you have your 3 to 5 core values, let's move on to visualizing your values. Some people will visualize their values by thinking about them as a pyramid. The base is the one that's most important to me. It's the one that really is foundation for who I am, and so on. Some people visualize their values utilizing a pie chart. So 50%, of me really needs that integrity. Those are 2 examples. I also invite you to consider what other ways you could illustrate your core values. I've seen some very creative ways of illustration. The important piece is that this is an illustration that speaks to you, that helps you to recall and remember what your core values are, but again, also just helps to illustrate how they show up for you. So pause here, and I would love for you to take a moment to visualize your values. There will be an opportunity to share your values on a platform if you are interested. While we're not going to be doing breakout groups here on this webinar, I do invite you to go to this Padlet to share your visual. There's going to be a column that says core values visualize. Take a picture of your visual and post it on that Padlet. And for folks who have done this webinar, everyone will be able to go back to the Padlet and see the different ways that folks have illustrated their values. Here's an example of what that Padlet looks like. We'll see if it comes up. So there are going to be two different columns, one for visualizing your core values, and the other is going to give you space for deeper reflection. For the sake of time, this is what it looks like, and you'll see the columns when you go onto your own computer. So now I'd like you to pause and take a moment to actually reflect on some of the insights that you can gain from understanding these core values that you've just narrowed to. So head to your learning packet again and read through all of the questions. You don't have a time restriction that we had when we did this live. So instead of you restricting yourself to 5 minutes, I would encourage you to read through the questions, choose the questions that you want to focus on, and take some time to deeply reflect. How did it make you feel to get to the list of core values? Were there any core values that surprised you? Were there core values that you're like, oh, yeah, of course, that definitely shows up in all aspects of my life? Are there some core values that you're feeling a sense of misalignment with? Pause here, take some time to reflect. I also encourage you, pause here and come back another day. This is not an exercise that has to be done all at once. And if it would help you to return to your core values, to reflect on them more deeply, I encourage you to do so. Because this is a recorded webinar, we're not going to be doing breakout groups. However, you can return to that Padlet, and there's a column called Core Values Reflection. You are welcome to share some of your high-level reflections there. Again, you can also return to that Padlet and see other folks who have participated in this webinar and read their reflections as well. Pause here and reflect on your core values and post those reflections for others to see and share. Now that you know your core values, you fully understand them, maybe not fully. Again, that is work over time, but you're taking the time to become more aware of your core values. You're going to allow those to be more conscious, right, within your life. I'm wondering, what's one action that you will take towards greater alignment with your core values? You'll note that I said one action. And that is because we can often get very overwhelmed when we try to do too much at once. Our lives have been the way that they are because over time they've gotten to where they are. It takes time to also unravel and to unlearn. So, is there one core value that right now you're saying, you know what, I really want to get more in alignment with this value? And with that core value, what's one thing you can do this week to become in more alignment? Pause here, and I'd love for you to consider that for yourself. Jot it down so that you can have more intention behind your actions. One of the things that I know about core values is that it's so important to come back to them, to not just set it and forget it, but on a regular basis to reassess them. How are they showing up in your life? How do you want them to show up in your life? And what actions do you need to take to get in more alignment with them? One of the things I've noted in my own life is in those moments where I'm feeling disconnected, where I'm feeling maybe just even not quite grounded, coming back to my core values is a good foundation and first step to checking in with myself. During that time where I was at my last school and honestly feeling the most unwell and the most overwhelmed and the most out of tune with myself, I'm so grateful that one of the first places I landed was in that notebook, looking at my core values. And one of the first decisions I made was to focus on wellness. And while the conditions remained the same at that school, I began actually taking steps to focus on my wellness. One of the things I did was decide that each week I was going to take some time and actually take a walk around campus, like just take a break, have a meeting with myself, if you will. I would often walk around the woods on campus, walk the track during one of my break times, and just having more wellness in those spaces, in that space, which I found to be very toxic, helped me to then show up in better ways for the people I was serving. I may have been overwhelmed. I was becoming less overwhelmed as I started showing up more for myself. I was able to set better boundaries as I was bounding my time to make sure that I was staying focused on my wellness. So this one action at a time ends up actually having a beautiful domino effect, if you will. Small steps always lead to the big ones. If you're wondering how you can not just stop here, but continue to work on your wellness, you recognize that you're thriving in some areas of your life, but you also want to make sure that you're continuing to have a sustainable personal life, join me. The Ubuntu program is my umbrella program for all of the services that are going to take you through these 5 principles, whether that be some of the free resources with the Start From Within program, which are going to have exercises that you can do that are in alignment with these 5 principles, whether we're going to be one-on-one coaching together and walking through these principles together or with a team that you bring to the table. Or you may want to invest in the full year-long cohort program, which is a group coaching program where we follow these 5 principles together throughout an entire year. Whatever it may be, if you're interested in joining the Ubuntu program or any of the efforts, please contact me. You can learn more about the year-long virtual group coaching program at ubuntugroupcoaching.com. And again, stay tuned because there's going to be more about the other programs, the free resources, the one-on-one coaching, and the team coaching added very soon. Thank you so much for engaging in this webinar. I hope that you will take the time to share the experience, share your insight gained. You can follow me on social media and share there. You can also send me an email. My email is on the screen. And I hope that you'll also use this QR code to go to my links page and to see the various resources that I have available for you to continue doing this work so that you can thrive in your career and not sacrifice your wellness and your personal life. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you have been able to discover your core values, that you're going to find ways to be in greater alignment with them, and that you'll continue to make those a conscious awareness for yourself so that you can live a transformative life by leading, acting, and making decisions in alignment with your core values. Have a fantastic day. Thank you for being here. Share this with someone that you know also needs to take this time to themselves to get in greater alignment with their core values.